So in Zen, there's always this question of, do I need a teacher? And the question comes down to is, what will the teacher teach you? Can the teacher actually teach you to be enlightened? That's a very interesting question, because the question then assumes that the teacher themselves is enlightened, and thus they know how to enlighten you. Then the question comes down to, can even an enlightened person teach enlightenment? And this is something that even the Buddha was asked about, changing karma. Can a Buddha change a person's karma? And even the legendary Buddha said no, that even a Buddha cannot change another person's karma. So then the question comes down to, if a Buddha cannot change another person's karma, which means, their life stream, their mind stream, and the mental habits therefore attached and created that are moving through the ether and the time and space, then how could a Buddha teach enlightenment? But the Buddha doesn't really teach enlightenment. They teach the path to enlightenment, which means you cannot really define enlightenment. You can't call enlightenment a thing or a place or a state of mind or a feeling or an attitude or a perception or a view. So when you really look at it like that, it's like, okay, you can talk about everything around it, the path, how to actually walk this path to enlightenment, or how to walk out of defilement, might even be a better answer. So this is something where a person would say, well, if I'm going to do this thing called Zen, then I need to learn how to walk on the path of Zen, how to get rid of my defilements. So what are we talking about as in defilements? Well, a lot of times it's just these crystallized thoughts and perceptions. They are conceptualizations of the phenomenal world that you take for granted. These would be mental concepts, mental views that you just grab onto and you form to be the world, to be yourself, to be right and wrong, to be morality. And in this, we kind of build upon it this self, this identity of who I am and my position and place within this world and society. Yet when we start to really break that down into what that is, it really tends to come down to all of these rules, all of these, well, this is right and that is wrong. This is good and that is bad. And it's all within the socio-economic human world that we live in. And we start to realize after a while when looking at these things that that's very fluid. For what was considered right and wrong today may not have been considered that in the past. They may have been considered nothings, or people may have engaged in behaviors in the past that we would consider repulsive today. And we might be committing behaviors today that in the past would have just been unseemly and horrible. So it's fluid. And so what does that mean when it's fluid? It means it's changing. That means it's created within our own minds. But it also means that it's something that can be indoctrinated upon us. And when I mean indoctrinated, I mean we are taught these behaviors from a very young age by other people, but we're not really told why. We're not really told the reasons for these behaviors, for these rules, for these ways of acting. So we behave, this is how we live. We build layer upon layer upon layer of conditioning, and we live in it. And this is all mental. This is all passed on by indoctrinating generation after generation after generation, to the point where only the rule remains, but we don't know why there's the rule. We don't know why that is. It's sort of like the story of the 5 monkeys, in where there was an experiment where they put 5 monkeys in a cage, and they put a ladder that led to a little room with a banana in it. And every time the monkeys would go climb the ladder up to the room, they would spray the monkeys with ice cold water until the monkeys would run down the ladder and hide, because they didn't want to get sprayed by the ice cold water. Well, after a while, no monkey would actually go up the ladder. So they took one monkey out and they put a new monkey in. And as soon as that monkey, the new monkey, tried to climb up the ladder, all the other ones would tear him off the ladder and beat him up. And that got to the point where the new monkey just would not go up the ladder, but he didn't know why. Well, slowly the scientists replaced each of the original monkeys with new monkeys. And all the new monkeys who were being indoctrinated by the original monkeys would pull the new monkey off the ladder every time they try to go up the ladder and get the banana, and beat him up. So it got to the point where even the new monkeys wouldn't go up the ladder, but they didn't know why, because they were never sprayed with the ice cold water. And they kept repeating this by taking out indoctrinated monkeys, putting in new monkeys. Same thing. The monkeys would continue this pattern of beating up any monkey that would go up the ladder, to the point where no monkey would go up the ladder, and they had no clue why. Well, this is how our society works. And we create these conditionings, indoctrinations, and what we call society, or what we call right and wrong, or what we call morality. But the reasons why they were created are mostly lost to us. So upon layers and layers and layers of conditioning and indoctrination and brainwashing and all that was going on, we create the self. And we create the false self. And this is where the seat of suffering is for most people. They suffer between all of the conditioning, all of the indoctrination, all of the right and wrong, and then, of course, between freedom, that which is to be liberated from all that. And so there's a lot of suffering going on. The friction of samsara, it's the grinding of the world against you, and you suffer. So when we talk about Zen training, what is the teacher then going to teach you? Well, the teacher's probably, if they have any clue whatsoever, is going to help you notice and see your own suffering in whatever way they can. Whether it be, okay, just go in the corner and sit. And, you go in the corner and you sit and you fidget and you move around and you're wondering, why in the hell am I doing this? Why am I looking at a wall? Why am I doing this? What's the point of all this? And you're struggling, and you're thinking, I'm going to sit here until I'm enlightened. Well, that ain't going to happen. What is it that's really going on is that you're suffering because you're following a rule. You're doing what the teacher told you because why? Because you want to get something? Well, because you're indoctrinated. That's why. You're suffering. You don't have to go sit. You don't have to go look at the wall. In fact, maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you should liberate yourself from that. But I digress. The point of this is that indoctrination and conditioning is the suffering, and has always been the suffering. It's the seat of suffering. And hopefully the teacher, if they have any clue of what they're doing, It's going to be pointing out to you, hey, do you like that? Do you think this is good? Do you think that just doing what I say and conforming to whatever I tell you to do and just following the rules that I make up out of pure thin air, do you think this is going to get you enlightenment? Well, if you think that, you're in the samsara trap. You're just going to sit there and suffer and suffer and suffer until the one day that you realize deep within yourself the truth of it all, which is you're just caught in the suffering trap, and the only way out is to let it all go, to relinquish it all, to surrender to, not to surrender to it, but to surrender to this idea that you're going to get enlightened by sitting in front of a wall and looking at it for endless hours, or by following all these rules and customs which are meaningless and senseless. Now, like I said, if the teacher has any clue of what they're doing, they're going to keep pointing this out to you up and until the point when you realize you don't have to do any of that. None of that's going to get you anywhere. And when you start to free yourself from all of these conditionings, all of these mental constructs and contraptions and crystallized views and all of this indoctrination, something miraculously happens. Suddenly, all this suffering that has been tormenting you, that you've been sitting in, that has been like acid all over your body, hurting and pain and gnawing at you, suddenly it's gone. And you feel like you've broken through the waters to take a breath of pure fresh air. Is it that enlightenment? It's the Path of Zen. That's what it is. And then maybe one day you realize I don't even have to go to the temple. I don't have to sit in front of that wall. I don't have to do all the chantings or anything like that. Because you don't. Because you're starting to flow within the Buddha nature itself, which has nothing to do with the Zen temple, the robes, the bibs, the haircuts, the incense, the bowings, the rule following, the customs and forms. Nothing to do with that whatsoever. So getting back to the question, do I need a teacher? Well, if the teacher, maybe they could be 7 years old or 100 years old, if they could point out and reveal to you that which makes you suffer, then that could be your teacher. It could be anybody. It can be, like I said, a 7-year-old child or a 100-year-old woman. Doesn't matter. When you have that mind, then all things and all people become your teacher. And when it's like that, then the universe becomes your teacher. The cosmic Buddha becomes your teacher. And that is the highest teacher. That is the Tathagata Garbha, the Buddha matrix itself that you have awakened to. And that is the Path of Zen. As for, like I said, what is enlightenment? You can't conceptualize it. You can't say what it is or isn't because it defies words. That is something that you tend to know yourself, but you can never express it. Because expressing it defiles it. Now, there are those who will say, well, I want to be a Zen priest. Well, that's a whole nother thing. To be a performance artist, to be a showman, to dress up, to perform rituals and ceremonies, to officiate, to lead people in holy sacraments. That's a whole nother direction. It's entertainment. That's the same thing as a stage play. That's what it used to be. People would go to the church and they would sit in the pews, and there would be a big railing that they couldn't go across, and only the priest would come out to the dais, which is where everything was at the altars, all the holy symbols, and the priest would come out and put on this big elaborate show, often spoken in Latin for the Christians, or in Sino-Japanese, which is a kind of a Japanese imitating Chinese, Asians for East Asians. And what you would have is this show, and the laity, that would be those that are just the unwashed masses, would come in for the big show. And the priest would come in and put on this elaborate performance of bells and gongs and incense and everything all together. And, it could last anywhere from 45 minutes to a couple hours. And then the show would be over and everybody would feel, oh, we watched the big holy show, we're all blessed. It used to be back in the early, before, I think it was 1400s in Christianity, the priest would never even look at the audience or even talk to the laity people. And that's the same thing in Zen. And the Zen priest, they come out and put on the show, and everybody would give them money because they consider it's merit and it's good karma, and it's that whole thing about, well, if I have no time to go and do this thing called Zen, I'll just give the monks, because they're trying hard, and look, they're doing all the rituals for me. I guess that's good merit. So they would give them money, give them land, and be patrons, and so it was entertainment. Because remember, back in the days, even back 150 years ago, there wasn't radio, there wasn't TV. We had stage plays at best, and religious plays, religious entertainment. It was a big thing, and for most cultures and society, that was pretty much all there was. So to say that you want to be a priest, well, like I said, that's a whole nother thing that has nothing at all to do with Zen or Buddhism. So, do you need a teacher? Well, there are those teachers who are not really there for your benefit. They are there for their own benefit. And they're not really looking for students, they're looking for victims. And they will try to bring people in and then get them to make a personal relationship with themselves, or with the lineage, or with some fictional character or some fictional deity. And they will really, really try hard to get you to come into this relationship, this love affair, this idolization and worship of something, whether it be themselves. They may actually say that they are the Buddha, or that they are the Buddha field, or with a lineage, our holy lineage, this. And a lot of times they will do this through ancestor worship or lineage founder worship. And then, or they might do it through a mythical or fictional character. Oh, he died for your sins. Oh, he was inspired by God and God spoke to him. So these are things that they do. They get you to create this, like I said, like a love affair, an idolization, a dependency, that you have to have this personal relationship with what they say. And when they do that, because they control what it is that you're idolizing, that you're having the relationship with, they control you. That is how cults work. That is the primary number one tool they do, is get you to make this relationship, get you to make this deep personal relationship with something that they control. And then they got you, because now they can get you to do anything. Now, if the Zen teacher is doing that, then that person is not a teacher. They are a cult leader, probably a dangerous cult leader. Somebody you should probably not be around if that seems to be what the person that calls himself teacher is doing. You want to probably run as fast as you can away from that person and never speak to them again. Okay, so if you are making it this far, you're probably wondering about, well, what about books? What about education? What about history? Well, I think that some books can be very dangerous and very counterproductive, and other books can be illuminating to the path. Um, you have to decide for yourself what books seem to be illuminating to the path and what books seem to be illuminating towards a cult. And I think if you listen to my videos and what I have just said, that should be self-evident for yourself to make that own determination. As for his history, what was the authentic Buddha's teachings? What was the authentic teachings of Zen? Honestly, I have talked to so many monks that have tried to chase that down. What was the original teachings? And they can't find them. It's even to the point where many long-term monks have declared that there really are no original teachings of Buddha because they can't be found. Everything is just later day, conjectured and assumed of what the Buddha said. And a lot of the so-called sutras were written and ascribed well after the day of the legendary Buddha. And the same thing with all of these codes and monastic creeds and things like that. They were penned well after the days of the Buddha, or at least the legendary Buddha. And this is what a lot of the scholars have found too, in which, that which you call Buddhism, it's kind of more of an amalgamation of multiple cultures and peoples sort of crossing each other's paths, mostly through trade, where things just sort of merge together and just sort of become a big melting pot. And then, it's like I said, it creates a later day version of the religion, which sort of includes a lot of folklore, a lot of tribalism, a lot of shamanism, a lot of local religion, and then of course the beliefs and the customs, from peoples afar who are traveling, and that's what you get. Does it have anything to do with Zen and Buddhism? Not a thing. But people get caught up in it. They say, well, they did this, way back when they did that. Does it have anything to do with what we're doing now? Probably not. I mean, it's interesting lore and good for storytelling. That's about it. The point of the Path of Zen is for you to walk it in the here and now. For you to really understand that this is about your path, not the path of somebody else, not the path of your teacher, not the path of the guru, not the path of somebody, in legend, or somebody that lived, 800 years ago or 1,000 years ago. This is about your path today, right now. And this channel has been my goal to awaken you to this aspect, to this path today, right now, for you to understand what is the true path of Zen, not this performance art path of Zen, or this showman path of Zen, or this cult path of Zen, which seems to be out there in quite a bit. And I know it's confusing out there. Mostly it's by those who are disingenuous, who are trying to make a cult out of it. They're trying to make something out of this, what's called the Path of Zen, for themselves. They're trying to become a teacher or a leader or a master, and they want power over others. And so they intentionally, confuse this. And sometimes people that have been in these cults, these mind control cults, they're really just doing unto others what was done unto themselves. And that's something that you also have to recognize, as to what is the noise out there. And a lot of it is just utter ignorance and foolishness that people get into. So that's something that I hope that you can be aware of as you're looking out there and maybe, visiting different places, is to assess, are the teachers there truly there to help you, or are they there to help themselves? Are the teachers just doing unto you what was done to them? That's another question. These are all things that you have to assess. I can't tell you which temple is good or bad, because I don't know. I really don't know. All I can say is that, you got to be careful out there. All right. Thank you for spending some time with me and listening to my words.